The cake knife was still in my hand when she stood up. There are sounds you never forget. The breaking of glass, the crack of a gun, the silence that follows betrayal. But the sound of her voice, my sister's voice, splitting through the laughter of our dining room, will haunt me until the day I die. "My son," she said, lifting the child as if he were a crown jewel, "is not just mine. He is your husband's son." The words dropped like stones into a well, and the room went still. For a heartbeat, I thought I'd misheard. The air around me thickened. Faces froze in that polite, horrified stillness people wear when tragedy has just walked in uninvited. My fingers tightened around the knife handle, bleach and detergent still clinging to my skin from the morning's cleaning shift. My world tilted slightly, like the floor had given way. She was still speaking. Something about inheritance, something about his will, something about half of my house. But her voice had turned into noise, just a hum in the distance, because my mind was already far away. Back to the moment I met him. Back to the moment everything started to rot. I met Michael when I was 22. He was 31, confident, magnetic, the kind of man who made you feel seen, even in a crowded room. He used to look at me like I was something delicate, a bird he wanted to protect, a secret only he could keep. I believed him. He was the kind of man who never raised his voice, who remembered what coffee you liked, who'd hold the door even when he was angry. That's how charm works. It's a weapon wrapped in silk. My sister, Elise, was 20 then. Reckless, beautiful in a careless way. She laughed too loud, drank too much, wanted everything all at once. But she was my sister, my blood. And blood forgives. At least, that's what I used to tell myself. It started small. A touch too long when he passed her a plate. The way she looked away when I entered a room, like she'd been caught staring. Then came the perfume on his shirts, not mine. And his phone, always locked. The late nights that didn't have explanations. One night, he came home smelling of rain and another woman's perfume. His collar damp, his hands trembling slightly. He said he was tired. I said nothing. I only watched. Observation is more powerful than accusation. Because when you speak, they learn what you know. But when you stay silent, they show you everything. It was a message that told me the truth. Next time, don't leave the necklace. She almost saw it. A single text, half deleted, buried in his phone under a name that wasn't hers. A. Lewis. Except Elise never could resist signing her name like that. And I remembered the necklace. Thin gold, a teardrop pendant. She wore it at our mother's birthday dinner, shining under the chandelier light. When I'd asked about it, she'd smiled too quickly and said, "A gift from a friend." That was the night I stopped being a wife. That was the night I started being something else. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I smiled. Because that was the night my mourning ended, and my planning began. Revenge doesn't begin with rage. It begins with discipline. For 3 months, I spoke softly. I cooked his meals. I folded his shirts. I became predictable, invisible. That's how you make people lower their guard. While he slept, I met with lawyers. Quiet men who didn't ask questions, who understood the language of power. I learned about offshore accounts, debts, assets hidden under shell companies. And I learned one more thing. He never read what he signed. That's how I slipped the real will under his nose, hidden between a stack of business papers. He signed it absent-mindedly, while sipping coffee, kissing my cheek. "Always taking care of me," he said. Yes, always. At the same time, I watched Elise's life unravel in silence. She'd moved to a smaller flat. Her makeup had grown heavier. Her eyes had lost their sparkle. She thought he'd leave me for her. He never did. Men like Michael don't leave their comfort. They only consume what's close enough to reach. But I didn't want him to leave me. I wanted him to stay, long enough to make sure the noose fit perfectly. He died suddenly. A heart attack, they said. Collapsed in his office. Gone before the ambulance even arrived. I didn't cry. Not at first. Grief is a language I'd already forgotten. At the funeral, Elise wept harder than I did. Her wails were operatic, dramatic enough to make strangers pity her. She held her son close, that child with eyes too familiar, and sobbed like a widow. I watched her and saw it. That flicker of victory. She thought she'd won. But grief looks different when it's mixed with greed. 3 weeks later, at the memorial dinner, she stood up with that same self-righteous calm she'd always used when lying. "My son," she said, "is your husband's son." She held the child high, as if he were proof of divine justice. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that only the cruel can manage, and said she would honor her late lover's memory by claiming her share. Half the house, half my life. I looked at her for a long time. And then I smiled back. Because the will she had seen was never the real one. Because the house, the accounts, the business, everything belonged to me alone. Because every secret, every betrayal, every lie had already been accounted for.